There are things the human mind blocks out simply to protect its own sanity. Trauma, accidents, the sudden loss of a loved one. Our brains are hardwired to bury those memories under layers of psychological scar tissue. For years, I convinced myself that the night of July 12, 2006, was just a severe case of shared delusion, a waking nightmare born from exhaustion, heat, and the stress of moving into a new home. I told myself that my wife and my 8-year-old daughter had simply caught the virus of my own panic. But police archives do not lie. The cold case files labeled unresolved disappearance do not lie. And the deep, jagged gouges carved into the hardwood floorboards underneath my bed, the ones I can still feel with my fingertips if I reach down in the dark, are very, very real. If you are listening to this, or reading this in a quiet room, do me a favor. Check the space between the top of your wardrobe and the ceiling. Check the gap behind your bedroom door. That is where it always begins. It doesn't strike immediately. It likes to watch first. It likes to ensure you know it is there. The summer of 2006 was suffocating. My wife, Sarah, our daughter, Clara, and I had just relocated to a rural property on the outskirts of a small, forgotten town called Blackwood. The house was an old colonial structure, beautiful in a decaying sort of way, surrounded by a dense, uninviting forest of ancient oaks and weeping pines. For a young family trying to escape the frantic pace of the city, it felt like paradise. The price was absurdly cheap. So cheap that we signed the lease without asking the landlord a single question about the previous tenants. That was our first mistake. When the price of a home is too good to be true, the real rent is eventually collected in blood and sanity. During our first 2 weeks, the house was peaceful. But by the second week of July, an oppressive heat wave settled over the county. The air conditioning unit in our old house died with a metallic wheeze on a Tuesday night, leaving the indoor air thick, humid, and stagnant. To survive the night, we had to leave the first floor windows propped open, relying on thin mesh mosquito screens to keep the outside world out. It was the third night of the heat wave when the anomaly began. It didn't start with a loud noise or a sudden jump scare. It started with a scent. I woke up at exactly 3:42 a.m. My throat was parched, feeling like sandpaper. But it wasn't thirst that pulled me from my sleep. It was a pungent, overpowering odor that smelled like a mixture of copper, old pennies, and rotting meat. It was the distinct smell of a small animal that had died inside a wall, but concentrated, fresh, and close. I sat up in bed, rubbing my eyes. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint, amber glow of a distant street lamp filtering through the window screens. Beside me, Sarah was fast asleep, her breathing heavy and rhythmic. I glanced toward the far corner of the room, where an old rocking chair sat in the shadows. Because of the angle of the light, that corner was always dark, but tonight, the shadow over the chair looked wrong. It wasn't the shape of a piece of furniture. The silhouette was too tall, crouching, leaning forward in a way that defied the structural shape of the wood beneath it. "Sarah?" I whispered, my voice cracking slightly. No response, just the steady sound of her breathing. I reached out toward the nightstand to turn on the lamp. My palm was slick with sweat. My fingers found the plastic switch, and I flipped it. Click. Nothing happened. The bulb was dead, or the power had been cut. And that was when the shadow in the corner moved. As my eyes strained against the darkness, the ambient amber light from the street lamp caught the contour of the figure. My heart gave a violent, painful thud against my ribs. Every muscle in my body seized. It wasn't a shadow, and it wasn't a piece of furniture. Something was crouching on top of the rocking chair. It was a creature whose anatomy seemed to insult human biology. Its limbs were long, impossibly thin, and bent at severe, unnatural angles, like the hind legs of a grasshopper or a starving dog. Its skin was a sickly, translucent ash-white color, completely hairless and stretched so tightly over its skeletal frame that I could count every single vertebra protruding from its spine. The creature had its back to me, its head bowed low, staring at the wallpapered wall. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. Panic is supposed to trigger a fight-or-flight response, but true, cosmic terror paralyzes you. It turns your blood to liquid lead. The smell of rot grew stronger, stinging the back of my throat. Then, with a sickening, deliberate slowness, the entity began to rotate its head toward me. There was a sound, a dry, muffled popping noise. Crick, crack. It was the sound of vertebrae grinding against vertebrae. Its neck twisted in an angle that should have snapped a human spine instantly. When its face finally turned completely toward me, I wished the darkness had blinded me. The creature had no nose, just two vertical, slit-like nostrils from which a faint, wet wheezing sound escaped. Its eyes were massive, entirely black, devoid of sclera or pupils, yet they caught the light of the street lamp like the eyes of a nocturnal predator. Its mouth was a thin, lipless slit that stretched almost from ear to ear, curved upward into a hollow, mocking grin. It stared at me for what felt like an eternity. I watched its ribcage expand and collapse. It was breathing my air. Suddenly, with an oily, fluid motion, the creature slid off the chair and onto the floor. It didn't walk. It moved on all fours like an oversized, emaciated spider, its limbs clicking against the hardwood with terrifying speed. Before I could even blink, it had crossed the room and was standing at the foot of our bed. It rose up onto its hind legs, towering over us, its torso leaning over the mattress. It lowered its face until it was mere inches away from Sarah's sleeping face. Its hands, its hands, ended in massive, curved, charcoal-black talons, easily 10 to 12 inches long, sharp as surgical scalpels. I opened my mouth to finally scream until my lungs ruptured, but before a single vibration could leave my vocal cords, the creature's pitch-black eyes snapped toward mine. It raised one of its grotesque, filthy talons to its lipless mouth, placing it against its teeth in a universal gesture for silence. Shh! The sound didn't travel through the air. It echoed directly inside the frontal lobe of my brain, cold, heavy, and vibrating with malice. The next thing I knew, the morning sun was blaring through the window. The creature was gone. I hadn't seen it leave. At some point during the night, my brain had simply shut down from psychological overload, forcing me into a black, dreamless faint. Sarah woke up smiling, stretching her arms and complaining about the heat and a metallic taste in her mouth. I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling, staring at the floorboards at the foot of the bed. There, carved deep into the old oak, were 3 parallel gouges. They were fresh. The wood shavings were still pale against the dark varnish. I didn't tell Sarah. I couldn't bring myself to voice the madness. Instead, I waited until she took Clara into town later that afternoon to buy ice cream. The moment their car pulled out of the gravel driveway, I grabbed a heavy flashlight and a crowbar, and I went up to the attic. The attic was accessible via a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. It was suffocatingly hot up there, thick with dust and the smell of old insulation. The previous owner, an elderly man named Harold Vance, had died in a psychiatric nursing home a year prior. His estranged family had sold the house with all his belongings still inside, eager to wash their hands of the property. I searched through stacks of mildewed cardboard boxes, old winter coats, and broken radios until I found a heavy, iron-bound trunk tucked away under a heavy tarp in the darkest corner of the eaves. The lock was rusted solid, but with a hard, desperate heave of the crowbar, the wood split and the lid popped open. Inside were journals, dozens of them, all bound in black leather, organized chronologically from 1974 to 2004. I picked up the final journal from 2004. Harold Vance's handwriting started out neat and academic, but as the pages progressed toward the winter of that year, the script degenerated into frantic, shaky scrawls. I flipped to an entry dated October 14, 2004. It sat on my chest again tonight. The weight is structural. I can hear my sternum cracking under its limbs. The stench of its skin is inside my throat now. I can't wash it out. It whispered to me. It said my name. It told me that if I look into its eyes for more than 3 seconds next time, it will take the girl. It's up here with me right now. I can hear it scraping its fingers against the rafters above my head while I write this. God forgive me, I should have burned this house down before it learned my name. My hands shook so violently I dropped the journal. It fell open to a page near the back. On it was a detailed charcoal sketch. It was the exact same creature. The emaciated torso, the needle-thin limbs, the impossibly long black talons. But what made my stomach turn completely over was the text written around the margins of the drawing. Hundreds of times, written in tiny, overlapping letters until the paper was black with ink. Do not look at the pale man. Do not look at the pale man. Do not look at the pale man. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence of the attic. It came from the deep shadows behind the mountain of old boxes, where the beam of my flashlight couldn't reach. It was a heavy, wet, dragging sound. And then, the unmistakable noise of long claws lightly, rhythmically scraping against the wood. Sis-scratch! Sis-scratch! I scrambled down the attic ladder, so fast I tore the skin off my palms. I slammed the attic hatch shut, shoved a heavy oak dresser over the opening, and collapsed in the hallway, panting, tears of pure terror streaming down my face. When Sarah and Clara returned an hour later, I forced myself to put on a mask of sanity. I smiled, I kissed my daughter, and I helped my wife carry the groceries into the kitchen. But the illusion of safety shattered completely that evening. Clara ran into the kitchen, holding a bright red balloon. "Look what the tall man gave me at the park, Daddy," she chirped. I froze, looking at Sarah. Sarah looked back at me, her expression puzzled. "I told her to put it away," Sarah said softly. "Honestly, it was strange. I didn't see anyone give it to her. I turned my back for 1 second to pay the cashier at the ice cream parlor. And when I looked back, Clara was holding that balloon. She said a very tall man in a gray coat gave it to her, but there was no one around. That night, the heat wave broke in the most unnatural way. The temperature outside plummeted to near freezing within hours. The wind howled through the trees, making the old timbers of the house groan and pop. We put Clara to bed at 9 p.m. I personally locked her bedroom window and checked the screen, despite her complaints that her room felt stuffy. I kissed her forehead, left her door cracked open so the hallway light could shine in, and went to our bedroom. Before going to sleep, I went downstairs to double-check the locks on the front door. As I walked back through the dark hallway, my eyes caught something in the reflection of the hallway mirror. There was writing on the wall behind me near the ceiling. It was written in a dark, greasy substance that looked like old engine oil mixed with blood. It hadn't been there when I checked the house an hour ago. I approached it, my breath forming faint white plumes in the sudden, freezing air of the house. The message read, "She has sweet blood." A second later, a high-pitched, agonizing scream of absolute terror pierced the silence of the house. It was coming from Clara's room. I sprinted up the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I threw open her bedroom door so hard the doorknob embedded itself into the drywall. The room was freezing. The window, which I had personally locked, was wide open, the mesh screen torn to ribbons as if an animal had burst through it from the inside. Clara was sitting upright in her bed, her eyes wide, staring at the ceiling, screaming a continuous, breathless note of pure horror. Following her gaze, I looked up. Crouched in the corner where the wall met the ceiling, clinging to the plaster like an enormous, pale insect, was the creature. Its long, skeletal limbs were wedged into the corners of the room, and its head was hanging upside down, staring directly at my daughter. In its long, black talons, it held the red balloon, which it slowly popped with a single, sharp click of its nail. Pop! The creature let out a sound. It wasn't a growl, and it wasn't a hiss. It was a rhythmic, clicking laugh that sounded like dry bones being rattled in a leather bag. "Get away from her!" I screamed, lunging toward the bed. With a speed that defied physics, the creature dropped from the ceiling. It didn't hit the floor, it hit the wall, scrambled across it like a lizard, and vanished out the open window into the pitch-black woods before I could even reach the edge of the mattress. Sarah burst into the room, sobbing, grabbing Clara and pulling her into a tight embrace. Clara was shaking uncontrollably, her skin pale and cold to the touch. When I wrapped my arms around them both, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the back of Clara's nightgown, right between her shoulder blades, were 3 faint, red scratches. They weren't deep enough to bleed heavily, but they were precise. A mark, a brand. We left the house that night. We didn't pack bags, we didn't lock the doors. We got into the car and drove until we reached a well-lit motel 2 towns over. The next day, I broke the lease and hired a moving company to retrieve our belongings, instructing them to never go into the attic or the master bedroom alone. We moved into a modern, high-rise apartment in the city, surrounded by concrete, steel, and thousands of people. I thought the density of the population, the height from the ground, and the sheer amount of artificial light would protect us. I was wrong. It has been 3 years since that summer in Blackwood. Clara is 11 now. She doesn't talk much anymore, and she refuses to sleep without a bright fluorescent light shining directly on her face. Last night, I woke up at exactly 3:42 a.m. The air conditioning in our apartment was running perfectly, yet the air inside my bedroom felt heavy, humid, and thick with the unmistakable stench of rotting meat and copper. I lay perfectly still, my eyes fixed on the ceiling. I didn't look to the left. I didn't look toward the closet. But from the darkness of the hallway outside my bedroom door, I heard it. A faint, dry clicking sound. The sound of long, skeletal limbs moving slowly against the carpet. And then, a whisper echoed directly inside my head, closer and clearer than it had ever been before. I found her. If you are listening to this, and you ever smell rot in the middle of a cold night, do not turn on your lamp. Do not look for the source. Just close your eyes, hold your breath, and pray that it passes you by. Because once it knows your name, there is no apartment high enough, no light bright enough, and no city big enough to keep the pale man away.